and welcome to episode number 074 of Something Else with Ari and not KJ. It is the special one time a year when my dumbass stays awake all night long to watch Wrestle Kingdom. And literally, as I'm recording this, Wrestle Kingdom just ended. Like, literally, it's 7:03 a.m. Eastern Time, and Walker Stewart signed off at 7:01. Like literally, I pulled the microphone down, I turned on the recording equipment, and here we go. So overall, I would say this show was better than last year's. I wouldn't tell you that the three matches at the end of last year, you know, would be better than almost every match on this show. But this show I felt had more depth top to bottom than last year's did. Because you remember last year was a lot of this should be really good, this should be really good, this should be really good, but everything until the last three matches really fell flat. Whereas I thought this year, first of all, Okada Danielson is the 2024 match of the year. We can just write that down right now. Everyone else is going for second place. But I would say after Okada Danielson, which in my opinion is better than everything last year, including Omega Osprey, I would say that, 2, 3, and 4 would be the last three matches from last year. The Okada Osprey match, not the Okada Osprey, the Osprey Omega match, the Okada Jay White match, and the four-way for the junior title last year. If we were to rank every match from last year and every match from this year, those would be 2, 3, and 4. But the next 5 or 6 would be matches from this year's Wrestle Kingdom. So let's dive right into it. It is Wrestle Kingdom 18, January 4th, 2024, from the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo, Japan. Now, unlike with past years, they didn't give us an attendance, either real or fake. The only thing they ever said was it was, 30,000 people. And of course, the odds of having an exact number like 30,000 people are incredibly long. Although I guess to be fair, it's the exact same odds of any other very exact number being the attendance. So we start with the New Japan Rambo. It's the annual Royal Rumble. Final four go to New Year's Dash tomorrow to compete for the provisional King of Ring 2024 title. It's a 20-man Royal Rumble, and they do it almost every year. And it's not there to give you a five-star match. It's there to give you a fun opener for the most part, give you a little bit of nostalgia, give you some fun spots, warm you up for the rest of the show. And that's what it is. And I'll tell you right now, I think for the most part, it was better than last year's Rambo, mostly because this year there's only one spot where you lost track of who the fuck was in the match. And we'll get to that. Last year, it was like 90% of the match, you couldn't remember who the hell was still in the match and who wasn't. But number one was Chase Owens. Number two was Great-O-Khan. I literally had to watch the Japanese feed for the first half of this match, and New Japan was having issues with their streaming for probably the first hour or so, up through the about halfway through the junior tag team title match. After that, the only issue I had was on my end that I'll get to. But yeah. So I watched half this match in Japanese, which gave me a nice throwback to the first few Tokyo Dome shows I watched before they started bringing in the English announcers. So every year when I watch the Rambo, I have to remind anyone listening of the time I interviewed Chase Owens on my other podcast, and his monosyllabic ass was the second worst guest I ever had. And get me going one day, I'll tell you about the worst guest I ever had. Three was Gabe Kidd. This is where I noted that unlike a lot of prior years, they're coming down the ramp and not out of the dugouts in the baseball stadium for the Rambo. Because usually they reserve the ramp for the, people on the main show. Number four, Alex Coughlin. Coughlin and Kidd are working together. Of course, this being a battle royal, I was fully expecting one of them to turn on the other before the finish. Spoiler, that didn't happen. Number five was Jeff Cobb. Cobb hightailed it to the ring as if he was told he had 10 seconds to get to the ring or he'd be fired. Cobb ran wild on Coughlin and Kidd, tossing them with belly-to-belly overhead suplexes. Coughlin used the sack of shit slam on Cobb at one point. Number six was Hinare. So United Empire is well represented here in the early going. At one point, you can see in the background that a young boy picks up Hinare's jacket that he threw down on the ramp and sprinted it at top speed to ringside. Coughlin and Kidd at this point got eliminated by Hinare and Cobb. Number seven, Tomohiro Ishii. Ishii still looks like a complete and total badass. Um, and yeah, Ishii fared well against United Empire until the three of them kicked Ishii's head off. The good news is Ishii screwed his head back on. Eight was Mikey Nichols. Nine was Shane Haste. To be honest, I always say that I call bullshit anytime partners get back-to-back numbers like this. It's like wrestling is fake. Hmm. Shane was slowly jogging to the ring, and honestly, with his body language, I was convinced that he was doing a Santino Marella where he was running in just to immediately get clotheslined out, but no such thing happened. Number 10 was Yujiro Takahashi. Unfortunately, and we saw this again later with Taichi, even though we have a new president, the girls did not return. Um, and by the way, at this point was when the English feed returned, and so I managed to skip over the English feed just in time to see Jeff Cobb get tossed out. Number 11 was Master Wato. One year he's in a crazy four-way for the junior heavyweight title. The next year he's in a pre-show battle royal. Hinare got tossed by Haston Nichols. And I thought because Yujiro disappeared when I was switching over from Japanese to English. So I thought that Yujiro just got tossed and we never got told about it, but apparently he was just hiding. We found that out when number 12, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, came out. We got told that Yujiro just slid under the ropes and is in hiding. Okan was put in a double submission, but he survived. 13 was Yo, and the joke about Yo here, I don't know. I think we're supposed to believe that he didn't know he was going to be in the match, and because he wasn't dressed to wrestle, he was in a track suit. He was in, sneakers and socks, and he lost his shoes right away. Haston Nichols got them and beat him with his shoes. And speaking of tracksuits, I wonder if Gino Gambino ever got his Bullet Club tracksuit. 14 was Show, so Yo left the ring and ran up the ramp after him. Show had a wrench for some reason, and Yo tried to grab it from him. Show got the best of it, and eventually Yo slipped on the ramp and was calling for help as Show choked him out with the wrench. Number 15 was a surprise, Fujita Hayato. He did not come out to help per se, but by attacking both former members of Roppongi 3K, it did break up the choking. Chris Charlton really marked out for Hayato. 16 was Taiji Ishimori. Nichols accidentally hit Haste off the apron to eliminate him, and then Nichols got booted off the apron, followed by Ishii and Wato. So we're just flying out of the ring here. 17 was Doki. Yo was in the ring at this point. He had lost his socks, so he's now barefooted. He tried to walk the ropes, but got crotched, and then spent most of the next 5 minutes just laying on the top rope. I'm telling you, it really happened here, folks. Doki, for those who follow such a thing, won the New Japan bodybuilding contest, but for reasons, he still wrestles with his shirt on. I would think if you put forth the effort that would lead to you winning the New Japan bodybuilding contest, you'd want to show it off. But maybe that's just me. 18 was Toru Yano, because you cannot have a King of Pro Wrestling Rambo without the 2020 and 2021 King of Pro Wrestling. Yano avoided getting into the ring, which again proves that he is the smartest wrestler in New Japan. 19 was another surprise, Takashi Iizuka. Akira Nogami was sitting at ringside as an announcer and freaked the fuck out. Yano was mad in a different way as he went for a hug it out but got bit. Chase Owens got bit too, so I celebrate it. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. House of Torture then tried to recruit Iizuka, but he channeled his inner Hulk Hogan and tore the shirt. Number 20 was your King of Pro Wrestling 2023 winner, and thus the last entrant in the Rambo, Taichi. Um, for some reason, this happened last year too, and I imagine if I went back another year and a year before that, they don't tell the announcers how many people are actually in the Rambo, but you just know it's over because the reigning King of Pro Wrestling or the last year's King of Pro Wrestling is the last person out. By the way, it will never stop to amaze me how Taichi's singing always sounds exactly the same. It's amazing how that works. Iizuka put on his iron fingers and laid out several House of Torture members. As the show went on, I wished he would have done it to more of them. Sho, Takahashi, and Kanemaru are out. At this point is when it got to last year where I had no idea who was left. I just kind of had to take everyone's word for it, who was still in this match. Taichi wanted to shake Iizuka's hand, which Iizuka did, but then pulled Taichi in for a bite. Five guys teamed up to toss both Taichi and Iizuka out. No, not just five guys. I'm saying just five guys. And speaking of those five, we were down to five. Everyone teamed up on Okan briefly, but eventually my bestie of the resty Chase was the last one eliminated, thus giving us our final four of Toru Yano, Great Okan, Taiji Ishimori, and Yo. Yo, who came to the ring in a tracksuit, socks, and sneakers, lost his socks and sneakers, and spent half the match crotched on the top rope. Hey, whatever works. Anyway, they're going to be the final four in the King of Pro Wrestling four-way tomorrow at New Year's Dash. So Iizuka and Taichi continued to fight around Nogami, and they stripped him of his shirt and jacket. Unfortunately, that was the last we saw of Nogami, or at least the last Nogami was focused on, so I have no idea if he ever got a shirt back on. We then go to the main show, Junior Tag Team Champions Clark Connors and Drilla Mahoney versus TJP and Francisco Akira. Walker Stewart, Chris Charlton, and Rocky Romero are your announcers. I had never heard Walker announce a show before. And here's what I'll say about Walker, and I know I'll complain about him more throughout the show. He's not Kevin Kelly. And I understand Kevin Kelly is a great announcer, and it's hard to live up to that. And from what I understand, Walker does not have a whole lot of experience announcing. And he has a really good voice for announcing. It's a very nice voice to listen to, a very pleasant voice to listen to. He's not annoying. He's not screaming at me like Corey Graves. It's, it's fine. However, there are moments that I wanted to fly to Tokyo and strangle him. And they were all basically the same thing. And we'll get to that as we go through here, as he did the same thing over and over and over again. So TJP was actually in a casket. It was rolled out in a casket. The casket was already on the ramp, and TJP was in it, and Acker had to let him out. And TJP was I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, as I really should have written down how to pronounce it. The Oswang, which is a mythical creature in the Philippines. This was certainly the most unique entrance we've had in a while, and at the end of the day was depending on your preference, either the best or second best entrance on the show. And I I mean, there's only three special entrances that you could probably give it to, and one of them, I don't know. In my opinion, one of them is a distant third. We'll get to that. Anyway, the story of this was TJP was put in a casket by Clark and Drilla on the last show on December 21st, and that's what led to this entrance. The War Dogs, Connors and Drilla, had their new versions of the junior tag team titles with white straps, and TJP now has a mask which was very Fiend-like. And I wouldn't be surprised if you found out that they got their mask from the same person or the same maker. So the stream was very glitchy here, and actually, the showing of TJP's mask was what broke the stream for the final time on New Japan's fault. It did come back with TJP being strangled with a rope outside the ring at the guardrail, and Drilla posting Francisco. Drilla's mouth was busted open somehow. And Connors is just fucking with Akira, smacking the back of his head. They had tied TJP to the guardrail, and so Akira was essentially wrestling a handicap match. We got a cool spot where Akira jumped off Connor's back and hit a Canadian destroyer to Drilla. Um, Off camera, somehow TJP broke free, got to the corner for a tag, and we resumed your standard junior tag team title match. Drilla hit the Drilla Killa for a 2 count. Again, not uh, his name, not mine. He hit the 2 count. TJP, instead of kicking out, TJP caught the referee's hand coming down for the 3rd count. I don't think that would count, to be perfectly honest. So Akira gives Connors a Spanish fly as TJP bit Drilla and then spewed mist at him. Charlton tried to say it was Drilla's blood. It was not Drilla's blood. Anyway, TJP pinned Drilla after a 2x2, and so TJP and Francisco Akira are your 74th and new IWGP Tag Team Champions. From what I saw, it was a fun match. It was not in the same league of some of the past junior tag team matches we've seen, but it was a really good opener. TV champion Zack Sabre Jr. with the rest of TMDK in his corner versus El Presidente, Hiroshi Tanahashi. Walker says that Zack Sabre Jr. is setting a record for title defenses. It's almost as if Sabre's been the first and only TV champion so far. Tanahashi has a tremendous new robe, and I know he's 47 years old, and I know he's closer to his last bump than his first bump, but it's so weird seeing Tanahashi in the second match of the show. And I said this last year when they debuted the TV title, and I'll say it again. The TV title is a weirdly constructed belt. It is just too bulky. And if you've seen this thing, you know what I'm saying. It's just, I don't know, just it's the front of it with the main plate is too wide. And it just looks awkward. And it actually led to difficulty with Tanahashi trying to put the belt on at the end because, spoiler alert, Tanahashi wins. They made the joke that if Sabre wins, which he doesn't, because I just spoiled it for you, he becomes the Prime Minister of New Japan. IWGP Women's Champion Mayu Iwatani joined the Japanese announce desk as they announced that Stardom is going to be doing a show in Philadelphia in April, presumably over WrestleMania weekend. They note that Zack Sabre Jr. is 3-0 in singles matches at the Tokyo Dome. And the only two people with better records than that are Hulk Hogan of all people at 4-0 and Jushin Liger at 5-0. We had some nice technical wrestling from Sabre early, and Tana set things in motion with multiple twists and shouts, then hit the top rope crossbody, and then goes for the high fly flow, but Sabre got his knees up and rolled Tana up for a 2 count. And so these TV title matches, which have a 15-minute time limit, we're 3 minutes in and we're already working towards the finish. Tanahashi goes for a Texas Cloverleaf and Sabre turned it into a Goga Plata that Tanahashi then somehow turned back into a Texas Cloverleaf. Dean Malenko would be so proud. Sabre went from submission to submission to submission. The story of it was that he was taught that if a submission doesn't work in 6 seconds, then you have to find a way to change it up. Tanahashi used his own O'Connor roll and then fought out of an octopus attempt. ZSJ screwed Tana's head and neck. They did a series of reversals and roll-ups, and Tanahashi got the last and best roll-up because, to the surprise of a lot of people, maybe not so much the result, but the surprise that this was how it ended, Tanahashi picked up the win. So the king is dead after 365 days. Long live the new king, Hiroshi Tanahashi, the king of television. And I'll be honest, I want a rematch. This was just a really, really fun 9-10 minute match. And I guarantee, these two wrestling again will be just as much fun. Sabre handed the belt to Tanahashi and bowed to him before leaving. Tanahashi took the mic after the match and said it's been a while since he's been a singles champion and that this is a happy new year for Hiroshi Tanahashi. He hopes the fans offer the same support to all of New Japan that they show to him moving forward. He is the president and now the emperor of television. Yota Tsuji versus Yuya Uemura. So Yuya Uemura got fired from Impact after losing the Feast or Fired match at Impact 1000. So he had to go slinking back to New Japan so he could wrestle in front of 30,000 people. Tsuji, they told the story that Tsuji has pretty much always had the advantage over Uemura ever since they were both young boys. The first time that they wrestled, it didn't end in a time limit draw. It was Tsuji who won. When they extended the time limit, it was Tsuji who won. Um, Arguably, Tsuji had the better experience when he went on, when he went on his, oh my God, what the fuck's that called? His expedition, oh my God, someone's screaming the name at me right now. But when they went away to their different locations, arguably Tsuji had it better off than Yuya did. Now, sadly, unfortunately, Yuya did not come out with Joe Hendry or to a Joe Hendry song. Darn. They were running spots early on, and Yuya goes for a leapfrog, but Tsuji catches him and drops him with a spine buster in a really fluid spot. Gotta tell you, I don't know too many people who could have pulled that one off as slickly as those two did. Tsuji dropped Yuya with an electric chair drop that Yuya sold for close to a minute before snapping off a rolling cross arm breaker. In a lot of ways, this was a very basic match. You saw a lot of fundamentally proficient wrestling and nothing terribly complicated, but it all looked good and crisp. Legitimately, this is a step above a Young Boys match in some degree. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying that because, like I said, they didn't do anything overly complicated to screw with, people watching or, to take away attention from the other bigger matches on the show. It was do what you do very well and do it very well and get out, basically. Yuya ducks under a crossbody attempt and Yuta dropped under a crossbody attempt and dropped Yuya with a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker. Tsuji sets up for a superplex but got shoved off. Yuya went for a dive but got super kicked out of midair in a terribly telegraphed spot. Yuya hits a German suplex that Tsuji kicked out of, but a deadbolt suplex Tsuji was unable to kick out of, and Yuya Uemura gets the win here at the Tokyo Dome. Good match, weakest of the main card so far, but good nonetheless. Can I get a Joya? No? Okay. So we go to our next match, Shota Umino and Kaito Kiyomiya versus Evil and Ren Narita with House of Torture. It's been 4 years and I still can't believe Evil was the fucking IWGP champion. Shota arrived on a motorcycle that he drove to the ring in the third best entrance on the show. And I mean, it was cool, but there are two other better entrances, and one of them was TJP. Chris Charlton called him the Japanese badass, and I'm not saying it went over anybody's head, but it just, they chuckled, ignored it, and moved on. Show came out with a Pro Wrestling Noah shirt that Evil used a pair of scissors to rip up. Not sure how much heat he got with New Japan fans, but Kiyomiya was beyond pissed. Four-way brawl out of the gate. Evil distracted the referee while House of Torture members hit the ring. However, Kiyomiya kept dropping them with dragon screws. Shota Umino and Kito Kiyomiya got a double submission on, and the bell rang. However, it was Dick Togo ringing the bell. The ref got bumped, and the fans booed as this broke down into a 5-on-2 beatdown. Because even though there were 6 House of Torture members out there, only 5 got involved. And I think that's being polite. You don't want to do the overkill with 6-on-2. 5-on-2 is a proper number here. At one point, Show holds Kato upside down, and Dick Togo jumps off the middle rope with a chop to Kiyomiya's dick. Whatever. The ref got up, and it was only a 2 count, by the way. Our four-way brawl breaks down into a tag team match. Ren was laying on the middle rope, and Umino dove over the top rope and caught him with a DDT on the apron, which, by the way, is the hardest part of the ring. Evil choked Umino with his shirt, but Kaito made the save and hit everything as evil on Evil, but Evil then hit his own version. Narita and Umino reversed moves into reversals of reversals of reversals before Umino got the better. Yujiro distracted the referee as Narita smacked Umino with a push-up bar and pinned him with an X Factor. Now, I should note that there's way too much fucking wrestling on. I don't have the time or energy to watch every goddamn show put out by every company. And so I definitely lack on my New Japan watching. So I am not as tired as other people are of all these House of Torture matches. However, I will tell you by the end of this match, I was left feeling tired. This was a lot with that group. Never openweight champion Shingo Takagi versus Tama Tonga. Now, when I started watching New Japan, it was Hiroki Goto, Minoru Suzuki, and Tomohiro Ishii beating the absolute fuck out of each other in never openweight matches that made me mark out so hard and become a fan of New Japan. And these two were definitely trying to turn this back into the strong style title. A lot of hard strikes early, which since the majority of Tama Tonga matches I've seen are as a tagged wrestler and not a very strong style tag team wrestler at that, was pretty surprising to me. Takagi hit a tope over the top rope to the floor. And a lot of this match was not leading to a lot of note taking. And it certainly didn't help that my router decided at 4:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the middle of the biggest show of the year that it was time to reset and restart. So I had to take a 5-minute intermission here in the middle of the never openweight title match while waiting for my fucking router to restart. Gotta love technology. So I got connected in time for Tonga to hit a gun stun, but was unable to make the cover. Tonga blocked a clothesline and hit Bloody Sunday for a 1 count. Tonga rebounded off the ropes with a lariat that sent Takagi's head to San Jose. Dave Meltzer FedExed it back in time for Takagi to get a jackknife cradle for a 2 count. Tonga went for another gun stun, but Takagi hit his own. He hit a clothesline and a Made in Japan for a 2 count. Tonga rolled through a second Made in Japan and hit a Styles Clash, and then a gun stun for another 2 count. All that was missing at this point was a one-winged angel or Blade Runner to get all the Bullet Club leaders into this match here. Tonga hit the DSD, which is also known as the J Driller, for the pin and to win the championship. Now, obviously, I can't speak for what happened in that middle 5 minutes, but at least the beginning of the match and the end of the match were quite good. And I'm confident that, the match didn't go to hell during the 5 minutes that I was away from it. IWGP Tag Team Champions Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi versus strong openweight Tag Team Champions El Phantasmo and Hikuleo with Jado in their corner. Some of the big news of this show happened before the introduction of this match when Dolph Ziggler, aka Nick Nemeth, and his brother Ryan Nemeth came to ringside and sat at a table to watch the match. Interesting. So the referee, because both teams were champions and both sets of belts were on the line here, because Goto and Yoshihashi won World Tag League and were already IWGP Tag Champs, so they got to challenge whomever they wanted for Wrestle Kingdom, and so they wanted ELP and Hikuleo's strong titles. So we had four belts on the line, and the referee had one hell of a time trying to collect them and hold them. Phantasmo literally had to help him out and then called him a fucking idiot. So I gotta say, it is still weird seeing Yoshihashi being successful since it wasn't that long ago, like pre-pandemic that long ago, when he was basically a joke opening match guy who rarely won. And now he's a three-time World Tag League champion. He's an IWGP Tag Team champion for a year, and he's, had, a really good run here. Rocky calls Jado and Gato one of the greatest tag teams of all time. I mean, it's always good to put over the booker, I guess. Goto was on the top rope when ELP hit a Hurricanrana, sending Goto into Yoshihashi, which looked awkward. ELP accidentally super kicked Hikuleo on a miscommunication spot. Goto and Hashi then hit one big move after another on Phantasmo and almost had it won, but Hikuleo made the save. It gets a little funky as ELP tries to do another Hurricanrana to Goto and to Yoshihashi on the mat, and this time we ended up with the same exact awkward result as when they tried it off the top rope. Goto hit the Oshigoroshi to Hikuleo of all people, which that's not an easy move to do to somebody who's almost 7 feet tall, but that was only a 2 count. Phantasmo hit a super kick to Goto and a moonsault to Yoshihashi on the floor, and then they hit the Super Thunder Kiss 86 to Goto, but Goto again kicked out at 2. And finally, Hikuleo hit a giant frog splash to get the win and to win the titles. So rough in spots, but a very fine match. And they adhered to the code of honor before and after the match. And then they just left, and nothing was teased or done with the Nemeths. So, yeah. So moving on, it is junior heavyweight champion Hiromu Takahashi versus El Desperado. Takahashi is wearing an amazing coat. I know I talked about Tanahashi's coat earlier. This one was even better. So if you've ever seen Takahashi, he wears a very colorful coat. Basically, take every color you could think of and throw it on a coat, and that's Hiromu Takahashi's normal coat. Well, now he added to it by having tentacles coming out all over the place with eyeballs at the end, which, hey, I'll call that a hell of a coat here. Hiromu was taking his time getting into the ring, so Desperado hit a suicide dive to the outside, and the match was on. Hiromu battled back and hit a drop kick to the eye inside the ring and shot him into the barricades and into the front row outside the ring. They told the story that 2 years ago, Takahashi injured Desperado's eye, and Desperado needed surgery on it late last year. This was a match where the two battled for control as neither man was really able to maintain the advantage for very long here. Desperado worked over the knee to finally take control. Takahashi backdropped Desperado and then managed to barely avoid a chop block attempt. It's the injured left eye of Desperado and the injured left knee of Takahashi. So Desperado cranked on the stretch muffler and was actually able to hook one of Hiromu's arms and make it even more painful. But Hiromu was somehow able to break it with a Canadian destroyer. Yes, he somehow broke a stretch muffler by hitting a Canadian destroyer. In all seriousness, do you ever think Petey Williams regrets inventing that move? I will never, I will never, I'm 39 years old. I am theoretically going to live for another 40 to 50 years. I will never understand how the Canadian Destroyer became a transition move. Like, legitimately, nobody fucking wins with that move anymore. The only person who ever occasionally wins, I guess, is Adam Cole, and he does, the Panama Sunrise version. It's like literally, I don't remember anyone ever kicking out a Petey Williams Canadian Destroyer, and he is legitimately the only person that ever wins a fucking match with it, or at least used to, because I doesn't wrestle anymore. Desperado blocked move on the middle rope and used a back suplex, which really made the neck injuries of Takahashi's past come back to the present. Desperado used an Olympic slam and an angel's wing slash Este Loco for a 2 count. Desperado then hit the Pinche Loco, which is also the Dre Driller, twice for the win. El Desperado wins the title, and this is where the this isn't the first time he did it, but the first time I noted it because it was pissing me off. So far, during every title match, the titles have changed hands, and every single time during the winning pinfall, Walker Stewart begins announcing the new champion. Like in this case, Desperado hits the move. The referee's counting. The referee hasn't even finished counting. And Walker's already announcing that El Desperado is the new junior heavyweight champion. He did it earlier with the tag titles. He did it with the junior tag titles. I'm sure he did it with, I don't think he did it with Tanahashi because that finish just came out of nowhere. But the fact is, he kept doing it over and over again. It reminded me of that time that Matt Stryker did commentary on the Tokyo Dome, and you knew who was going to win every match just by his inflections and the way he commentated. Like Walker Stewart, it's like, and the thing is, like, either he's got the best luck in the fucking world, or he's trying to be Mr. Smart Mark and, telling you when the finish is because he didn't do it at any other point. At no point during any other near fall did he ever begin announcing the winner of the match. And yeah, it's a very Vince McMahon, Gorilla Monsoon thing to do to start announcing the winner of the match. And I was like, oh, no, he didn't get him or some shit like that. That's not what he was doing. He was literally announcing the winner during the winning pinfall. And it was really fucking annoying. And I know this guy is new to New Japan. I know he hasn't been announcing very long. I get he needs experience. Guess what? I can still fucking tear him apart because I had to fucking listen to him for 5 hours. Will Ospreay versus John Moxley versus David Finlay. These entrances were taking fucking forever on this show. I don't know, like maybe I'm just not remembering correctly. Maybe entrances have always taken forever in the Tokyo Dome, but I seem like they took much longer than usual this year. And I think part of it too is like, at least from what I remember, and maybe someone's gonna sit and say, "What the fuck are you talking about?" But at least that from what I remember in a lot of undercard matches, you know, once a guy was, 75, 80% of the way to the ring, especially in a multi-man match, the music started for the next person. And maybe someone's going to sit here and say, what the hell are you talking about? That's never happened. Maybe it's only ever happened in my head, but in my head, it used to happen, especially in undercard multi-man matches, and it sped things up a little bit. And I think it also hurts that, like, there aren't that many upbeat theme songs left in New Japan. It's basically Naito, Okada, Tanahashi, and I mean, that might be it. There were a lot of slow death music coming out here. It's like not even like it was like, I don't know, just like I was like, this is like it's just like you listen to sad, depressing music and it's just going on forever. It's like it makes the goddamn show drag a little bit here. But By the way, Walker says that Moxley is challenging for the global title for the first time ever. I know not everyone can be Kevin Kelly, but was he really the best option? The fucking global title just debuted, and he's telling us that this is the first time Moxley ever challenged for it. He's technically not wrong, but what the fuck? What the fuck, dude? What the fuck? Ospreay came out with his broken IWGP UK title and a knife, because why not? He lays them on the ground and then lowers himself under the ramp just to jump up a la 2002 Rey Mysterio. Okay, then. Apparently, this was a entrance inspired by Assassin's Creed. I don't believe I've ever played Assassin's Creed, but do they have a lot of championship belts and knives in Assassin's Creed? And do you jump up from under the ramp a lot in Assassin's Creed? Anyway, Masahiro Chono and President Tanahashi joined the Japanese broadcasting team. They announced this was a 60-minute time limit, so theoretically, if it goes an hour, we will still not have a champion. Ospreay and Moxley, during the press conference the day before, had a truce where for the first 5 minutes they would team up to kick the shit out of Finlay. And that's exactly what happened here. They beat the fuck out of David Finlay here in the first 4 minutes of the match. And because Walker Stewart is just not a great choice at this stage of his career, he announces that he thinks it's a bad idea to have made this strategy public. Keep in mind, he did not say this during the entrances. He did not say this during the introductions. He did not say this in the first 10 seconds of the match. He said it after several minutes of Moxley and Ospreay beating the shit out of Finlay. Tell me, how is it bad strategy since they were doing exactly what they said they were going to do? And Finlay couldn't do anything to stop them. For fuck's sake. Dude, get a fucking clue. By the way, I should note, and this is when I noticed that in the background, Nick and Ryan Nemeth are still sitting at ringside. Interesting. So Ospreay and Mox fought Finlay up the aisle towards the dugouts. They fought back to ringside, and Finlay got suplexed on the ramp next to the announcers. Moxley pulled out a table, and the former US and UK champions double powerbomb Finlay through the table. So 4 minutes in, since they've beaten the shit out of Finlay, they've left him for dead. They've decided that instead of spending another minute of overkill on poor David Finlay, that it was time to end the truce and to get it on. Mox blocks an Os cutter with a high-angle German suplex. Mox scratches Ospreay's back, which may have been nice of him. I mean, maybe Ospreay had an itchy back. Ospreay came off the ropes with a Spanish fly, but Mox somehow rolled through that to an armbar. I guess this is what you learn in jiu-jitsu nowadays. A minute later, Mox exploded out of the corner with a clothesline. They fought to an apron when Finlay woke up, posted Mox, and was about to powerbomb Ospreay, but got kicked in the head instead. Finlay grabbed his shillelagh and used it to... God damn it. Finlay grabbed his shillelagh and used it to assist in a neck breaker to Ospreay. Mox is, of course, wearing the Crimson Mask because, of course, he is. Finlay bit Mox's head, which really is the move of the day here, folks. Ospreay got up, and we got a series of big dives. Of course, Mox then punched Ospreay right in the face out of midair. Mox used the Death Rider that Ospreay kicked out of. That Mox somehow then transitioned into a bully choke, which at least makes more sense than some of the other transitions we've had on this show. Ospreay goes for a sunset flip to Mox as Finlay ran in, and as Ospreay's trying to pull down Mox unsuccessfully, Moxley pile drives Finlay onto Ospreay's chest. At this point was when I began groaning because we began going hardcore, but thankfully it did not get out of hand. Moxley brings out a bunch of chairs and throws them to the ring, and one actually cracked Ospreay in the head, so he then throws one in Finlay's face. Mox sets up two chairs back to back, but Finlay gave him a Uranagi onto them, so that hurts like a motherfucker. Mox then gives Osprey a Death Rider. Osprey popped up with a hidden blade, and Finlay tried to steal the pinfall to no avail. Later on, Osprey did another hidden blade to Finlay, and Finlay actually fell on top of Moxley for a near fall. We get a standoff with Finlay flipping both Mox and Osprey off. So even though it's past the 5 minute mark, the truce was back on, and they resumed beating the fuck out of David Finlay. So much to the dismay of the crowd, outran Alex Coughlin and Gabe Kidd to attack Mox and Osprey. Coughlin choked Mox out with his shirt, while Kidd set up tables outside the ring. Mox battled back on Coughlin, and Osprey hit a springboard os cutter on Kidd, who was on the top rope at one point. Moxley put them on the tables outside the ring, and Osprey did a senton to both through the tables. And I say through the tables. In Coughlin's case, it was legitimate because he was stuck in the table. Like it wasn't one of these nice US tables that are pre-cut and split perfectly down the middle. This was a Japanese strong style table where instead of cutting down the middle, a giant hole appeared, and that is where Alex Coughlin may still be to this moment because I never saw him get out of the goddamn thing. Back in the ring, Moxley hit two Death Riders on Finlay. Osprey hit two hidden blades and a Stormbreaker on Moxley. Finlay tried to steal it again, but again it didn't work. Finally, Finlay dropped Osprey with a GTS for the pin to win the title. There are a lot of things to not like about this match. If you're not a fan of Jon Moxley's propensity to turn every match into hardcore wrestling, you're probably not going to like it. However, there was a lot to enjoy. This was definitely a really, really good match. Um, to be honest, it's hard to rank it. I'd say it probably ends up as the fourth best match behind the two main events in the junior title match. Yeah, that sounds about right. Um, just going through here to see. You could probably argue. Well, no, it's better than Takagi versus Tama Tonga. But yeah, at worst, it's the fourth best match. I'd say at best, it's the third best match because it depends on your thought of whether this or the main event was better. So after the match, we got the big angle, and this could have gone. This was good. It could have gone better. So Finley gets in Nick Nemeth's face because Nick Nemeth is still at ringside. Nemeth stood up and walked around the table that he was sitting at. So Finley shoved him and the fight was on. Now, Dolph Ziggler, who is the baby face in this feud, was a complete dickhead, and he asks Dave Finlay, who just won the semi main event, if Finlay thought that he was worthy enough to talk to Dolph, which is just a total bullshit thing to say. And in my opinion, it kills the heat because it's like, what are you talking to the fucking, job guy from the opener or some shit? It's like, dude, like, what the fuck? Anyway, Nemeth went running after Finlay up the aisle, and apparently they continued to fight, but because I'm assuming it wasn't planned because New Japan's usually really good at this shit because there were no cameras anywhere near there. They were still doing the long shot of the stadium, getting ready for the next match, and the fans are going a little crazy because they know what's happening. The announcers are trying to tell you what's happening, but we never actually see it, and that's it. Gotta say, I that angle, like I said, it could have been a lot better. And it's all Nick Nemeth's fault that it wasn't a lot better because he screwed it up. And like I said, I don't know if that, afterwards where he ran after him was planned. I imagine it wasn't because, like I said, New Japan is a lot better at these things than this shit. Um, and if it wasn't planned, sorry, Nick, you better have a 6-star match, which, because I'm assuming this is going to be the San Jose main event next week. But you better have a fucking 6-star match to save your fucking job. Because to me, you'd be one and done. You'd be in and fucking out at this point. Because like he really blew the fucking farm on this one. So while Nick was running after, Finley, and this is what makes me think that this had nothing to do with it, because while Nick was running after Finley and getting into this fight in the aisle, the theme song for the Ace of New Japan came on for his match next. Kazuchika Okada versus Bryan Danielson. And, I imagine either they ran into the dugout or they realized what the fuck was going on and they just stopped, or Nick at least stopped and realized his fucking place in this show right now. But Kazuchika Okada versus Bryan Danielson. So Okada had a really fun entrance, and fuck me if I know how the hell they did this. But he comes out in one of his standard robes. He goes over and essentially stands in a scanning machine where it scans him from head to toe. And while it scanned him, it turned his jacket a completely different color. How did he do that? I don't know. That doesn't seem logically possible, but it did. Now, for years, I was making the ever so funny joke that Daniel Bryan was doing the pre-show Rambo every time Flight of the Valkyries would play, because that was also the theme used by Mr. Fujiwara. And so I guess now I can make the joke that Mr. Fujiwara is in the semi-main event at the Tokyo Dome in 2024. So, telling you right now, and I said this at the top of the program, I'll say it towards the end of the program. This is the match of the year 2024. Write it down your ballots right now. You like if you didn't watch the show, you didn't see this match, go check it out. Press pause. If you're for some reason listening to this show and you haven't watched Wrestle Kingdom yet, press pause. It costs $9.99 on NewJapanWorld.com. Go watch this match. Because this match was fucking fantastic. If you're somebody who hates, how wrestling has become not believable and just bullshit, you will love this match. If you watched the first Okada Danielson match back at Forbidden Door and thought that they could do so much better, go watch this match because they did. Just saying. So the match is Bryan has vowed to break Okada's right arm as revenge for Bryan's broken arm, for Bryan's orbital injury that he's gotten by facing Okada in other matches. And the match starts out with Okada being a little bit of a dick, to be honest. He begins by sticking out his jaw and daring Danielson to hit him. Danielson having one eye because he's got his eye patch on. It came back to bite him in the ass as Okada kept throwing elbows to that side of his face, and Danielson wasn't seeing them coming. Okada then uses his beautiful drop kick, hitting Danielson in the eye. So, like, Jesus Christ, Okada, you could say Danielson had a one-track mind. He's going after that arm. Okada was going after the eye. Outside the ring, Okada took a running start, and I don't know what his intention was. I don't know what he was eventually going for, but he takes a running start to go and hit Danielson, but Bryan cut him off with a knee to the fucking face. At this point, Danielson begins working on the right arm, slamming it repeatedly into the guardrail and closing the gate onto it. Danielson screamed that he would break Okada's fucking arm. It is amazing how simple yet amazing this match was. Danielson is working holds to the arm, and Okada is selling it like the ace that he is. Bryan ran headfirst into Okada's foot, giving the Rainmaker the chance to take over. Okada goes to the top rope, and Danielson cuts him off. Walker, who is doing his best to kill this match, made a big comment that these two have wrestled before. That would be great if it hadn't been brought up 37 times already. Anyway, Danielson used a butterfly suplex off the top rope and slapped on the label lock, but Okada got the ropes. A minute later, Okada managed to drop Danielson with a tombstone on the ring apron, which is the hardest part of the ring. Back in the ring, uh, blah, blah, blah. Back in the ring, Okada kicked at Danielson's injured eye and then ripped off his eye patch. And this is where you could tell that Danielson's eye was still fucked up because it was still a little lazy, you know, and, it was not at 100%. But to be honest, it helped make the match by doing that. Okada hit his drop kick and a top rope elbow. Danielson ducked a rainmaker and used a crucifix, followed by the 12-6 elbows to Okada and the Busaiku knee for a 2 count. At this point, Okada gets caught in the label lock, and Danielson uses the version that he used at Forbidden Door, where he would use his legs to hook Okada's arm, except this time Danielson didn't break his arm during the match and he was just doing it to play off of that. Okada fought, and I'm telling you, like, if this fucking move did not hurt, Okada's the greatest seller in wrestling because that boy was in pain. With his last gasp, he was able to make it to the ropes, by the way, so the label lock had to be broken. Danielson began stomping Okada's face, and I'm starting to believe Danielson did not know that wrestling was predetermined at this point, as with those stomps, it looked like he was legitimately trying to defeat Kazuchika Okada in a bout of combat. Okada managed to get up and hit a rainmaker, but the damage done to his arm came back to haunt him. As Okada was in too much pain to make a cover, they traded kicks. Danielson kicking Okada's arm, Okada kicking Danielson's eye. Danielson hit the Busaiku knee and began doing the yes chants in 2024 in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And yes, the crowd was chanting yes along with him. However, he missed another knee. Okada hit the attitude adjustment of all things and another rainmaker, falling on Danielson for the pin. Legitimately, he fell on Danielson to get the pin. If he would have fallen in a different direction, or if Danielson was 3 feet over, the match would have continued because Okada didn't have the energy to do anything more than collapse to the mat, and Bryan Danielson just happened to be there to be fallen on, to be fallen on. Goddamn, match of the year 2024. After the match, Okada and Danielson bowed to each other and shook hands, which is a great display of sportsmanship. However, I didn't want to see that here. And I just call this match of the year 2024. I'm going to take it down ever so slightly because of that. Because this match wasn't about two great athletes having a gentlemanly contest. This match was about Danielson trying to fucking break Okada's arm, and Okada, in response, trying to injure his eye even more than it was. Like, this match should not have ended with a handshake and a bow. I'm sorry. There's another time to do that. They could have had a rubber match, and then they do the handshake and bow. But this was not the time for the handshake and the bow. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not really that sorry, but, I'm sorry. Now, if this was WWE, we would get a 10-minute commercial for something on Peacock, a backstage skit, and then another commercial for something on Peacock. So you'd have like 30 minutes between the semi-main and the main event. And in case you think I'm lying, go watch this year's WrestleMania with Roman and Cody, because that's exactly what happened. However, New Japan being New Japan and not wanting to give a 38-minute break between the last two matches, sends out the main event next. It is IWGP World Champion SANADA versus Tetsuya Naito. It is too bad that this has been a very blah title reign for SANADA, because this could have been a really interesting story with the leader of LIJ versus his former minion, who not only got the title, but he got the run with the belt that Naito never got. And they mentioned this, and this was a key thing that Naito's been IWGP champion, but the first time he held it, he lost it immediately. Second time he won it at the Tokyo Dome. Immediately, the fucking world got shut down in the pandemic. And then as soon as they came back to wrestling, he lost the belt in his first defense back. Like that was the story where he's never had his big moment. Because even when he won the title, if you remember, I think it was Kenta who ran out and attacked him after the match. So he never got his big show closing, look at me, look how great I am moment. Because there's always been something in his way. Unfortunately, Sanada, oh boy, he's been champion since April, which may surprise a lot of people listening to this. Because do you really remember these great Sonata World Title matches? Here is the list of all four people he defended the title against, and I remember two of them, and I had to use Cage Match to find them all. He defended against Hiromu Takahashi, who knew? He defended against Jungle Boy at Forbidden Door, which I remembered. He defended against Yuta Tsuji, which I don't remember. And he defended against Evil, which I did remember. He had four title defenses in the last 9 months, and not a single one of them were against a top guy. Like, this was not Okada getting the IWGP title in 2012 and then having 4.5 star matches with every top guy on the roster. This was Sanada getting the title in 2023 and having mostly very good matches with mid card guys, essentially. Like, I'm sorry, Hiromu Takahashi's great. He was not a world title contender. Evil is a former world champion. He was never a world title contender, even when he was the fucking champion. And by the way, his only other non G1 singles match was on Impact against Jake something. So what I'm saying is this has been lackluster, and it's fucking New Japan's fault for leaving it like that because they could have had him in bigger matches, but they didn't. They could have tried to force Tony Khan's hand and have him in a more important match at fucking Forbidden Door than fucking Jungle Boy, but they didn't. And ultimately, this match, it picked up. I'll say that. But let me just read the notes that I got here. This is Naito's fourth IWGP title match at Wrestle Kingdom. The first two, the first two Okada matches were overshadowed by another match. The first one was the Tanahashi Nakamura match that was actually 10 years ago today, the January 4th, 2014 show, which actually led to Naito's heel turn and formation of LIJ, because that was when he was challenging Okada for the title in what was supposed to be the main event. The semi-main event was Tanahashi versus Nakamura for the Intercontinental title, and they did a poll over what match you want to see as the main event, and the Tanahashi Nakamura match greatly defeated the Okada Sanada match, or the Okada Naito match. And the second time they did it was when they did the first Jericho Omega match, which, as we mentioned, led to the formation of AEW and had a lot more to do with, people I used to subscribe to New Japan World that day who had never subscribed in the past. The third title match he had was fantastic, but like I said earlier, it immediately led to the pandemic, so it got greatly overshadowed. This match started very slow. The problem is, as I mentioned, they were a weak main event following the 2024 match of the year. We were 10 minutes in, and I was just waiting to get excited. And finally, 15 minutes in, I got my moment when they fought to the outside, and Naito draped Sanada on the barricade and dropped him with a neck breaker on the pretty black mats. In some ways, it's a very simple move. Obviously, anything doing on the outside is not inherently simple, but it's a neck breaker at the end of the day. It's not a crazy, 3/4 dive off the top of the building. It was a neck breaker, and Sonata sold it like death. Sonata sold really well. Back in the rings, Sonata hits a Poison Rana and a Shining Wizard before going for a moonsault, but instead he gets a stomach full of Naito's knees. Naito hits the Esperanza out of the corner and a Destino, but Naito didn't go for the cover and instead went for a second Destino, but Sanada blocked it and hit a TKO. Sanada hit the moonsault. At this point, we're 30 minutes in, and this is all I've written about this match so far. Sanada hit a moonsault 30 minutes in, hits a second moonsault, but Naito kicks out. Sanada keeps blocking the Destino, including a botched spot where Sanada just drops him. Naito hits two more, including one that just looked like crap, and Sanada kicked out. And I note that Naito is just going to hit Destinos over and over again if he has to. Sanada hit the death ball, which suddenly made the crowd wake up. Like, legitimately, the crowd suddenly woke up at this point. To the point where I'm thinking, is somebody running in? Because, like, what the hell happened here? Sanada hit his own Destino, but Naito hit a rolling capo kick. Sanada hit another Shining Wizard, but Naito hit his own Death Ball, a Brain Buster, and another Destino for the win. To be honest, they did 5 Destinos. 2 of them sucked. The other 2 weren't that great. That final Destino was pretty fucking great. And they saved the best one for the end. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, Walker was literally calling him the champion before the 3 count finished. Thank you, dude. Stop fucking doing that. So this was not Okada Danielson, but nothing else was. It was a very good main event, even with the botched Destinos, even with the absurdly slow start to it. It was a worthy main event. Like, it should have gone should it have gone last? Yes, because it was for the world title, but no for any other reason. And by the way, somehow in this, Naito was bleeding. And he's not Moxley, he doesn't bleed, at the turn of the head here. But somehow he's bleeding here. So Naito's the champion. He's standing mid-ring. He's got the microphone. He's about to get his long-awaited roll call as champion when Evil hits the ring with Dick Togo to attack Naito. Literally, just when I was about to ask who Naito could possibly face at this point, because they don't usually go to rematches, and it seems way too soon to go to Okada. But Evil comes out because, of course, he does. Evil was actually going to steal the title when Sanada came from out of nowhere and laid out Evil. Naito took care of Togo. Sanada said some words and then rolled out of the ring and left. Naito did thank Sanada for helping him at the end, and Sanada was literally crying when walking away. Naito got his roll call and got to walk away with the championship belt as the credits rolled. Now, part of the story too was that Naito is apparently not a fan of the IWGP World Heavyweight title because it's not they for some fucking reason when they, got rid of the 2 belts and just brought in the 1 belt, they started the lineage over again, which is just ridiculous. And so Naito's gimmick was that he didn't know how he was going to react to having the belt till he had it. And no, this wasn't the Intercontinental title. He didn't throw the belt on the ground and, disrespect the shit out of it. You know, he walked away holding it proudly. So that's it for Wrestle Kingdom. And this was not the Wrestle Kingdom of 5, 6 years ago, pre-pandemic, when they were just firing on all cylinders and hitting 7 or 8 4-star matches right in a row. But I'll tell you what, if you were me and you were up, from 1:30 in the morning until 7:02, it was a good show. It was a good show. And I don't regret staying up. I don't regret watching it. And like I said, I saw this year's match of the year. It was a fucking fantastic match. It was a really good show. It's going to be one of those shows I doubt I'll ever watch again, at least beginning to end. But I'm glad I watched it, and not just because I'm a completist. So it's now 8:13 a.m. and I've got to upload this. So I'm going to stop now. Going to end the show. Put the show up so y'all can listen to it, and I'm going the fuck to sleep. No weird news of the week. We'll do that next week. We'll do Mid South next week. All that fun shit. Thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you again in 7 days.